Hi, I'm Amanda, and I was almost trafficked. I was looking for a job, so I decided I was going to go to Lloyd Center. When I was finished, I walked out to the parking lot, and from behind me, I heard a man say something. I turned around. He was approaching me, he had a big smile on his face, very friendly, was telling me how pretty I was, asked me if I was looking for a job. He placed his hand on the inside of the car door and kept it open and had me kind of blocked in. From the car door, he placed his arm over my shoulders and directed me away from the car and then shut the car door behind me. He takes me up into a house that was right there on the corner, up onto the porch, and they tell me to get into the car. I started getting really scared at this point, and I wasn't really sure how to get myself out of this situation without being hurt. But then another woman comes down and gets into the car with me, who is probably just a couple of years older than me. She asks me if I'd ever been on dates before, and I was like, well, yeah, I've been on dates before. And she's like, okay, great, but have you been on this kind of date before? And I was like, I don't know what's happening right now. So we get on the freeway, I'm starting to panic a little bit more, and we get to the Clackamas Town Center. The four of us go inside, and one of the guys tells her to take me over to Fredericks of Hollywood. So we go into Fredericks of Hollywood, and she picks out some things along with the sales lady. And when she went into the dressing room, thinking that I was going in the one next to her, I actually turned around and I bolted out of Fredericks of Hollywood and out the door, and I jumped on a bus. And I was able to get myself back over to the Lloyd Center by asking somebody to pay for my fare. And only in the last couple of years has the knowledge of really what's happening with being trafficked, have I been able to accept that that's what almost happened to me after I have learned more about trafficking and what that looks like, because the only things that are really ever portrayed are the really, really intense ones of people like getting kidnapped and sent over to like Colombia and things like that. Like that's really the only stories I had heard. So having that actually be something that's happening in the US and in the town I live in, it didn't make sense to me.
Before this, I would have never thought that I would have been exposed to it, or that like this was something that was real. At the age of like 12, my mom started kicking me out, and so I was on the streets. I got into prostitution at the age of 14, and like I remember getting picked up a lot as a minor, just because like curfew, and my mom knew that I was getting picked up for prostitution, but she would pick me up from juvie and ask me where I want to go and drop me off somewhere, and that was that. I was nervous about the system. It was really hard to trust and feel loved and cared for, and I think because of how young I was, I didn't know how to trust anybody. I remember the first time that I met Esther. She came to the juvie. I remember her kind of sharing a little bit of like what she did, and I didn't really want anything to do with her. I was the kid that nobody visited, so it was really nice to have a visitor. And at first we didn't talk. I didn't want anything to do with Esther. But she started kind of coming with like poetry and art, and that was how we began to connect. I don't really know if like I still can grasp the concept that like I'm out of the life. I think that like I always question how good I am and like am I enough, and so as I learned that like I'm still learning, I don't want to be like bullheaded and say like I'm further than that, because life can always hit us with something new, and it's all about learning how to navigate those in a different way. And I think being in the position to help and advocate with women and girls keeps me centered in why I have changed and how far I've come.
I was involved in the adult sex industry for almost a decade. And the entire time that I did it, I thought that it was my choice. I was really in love with the person who got me into the sex industry. In fact, we got married. It didn't register to me at all that something other than like maybe domestic violence or just some really like bad situations had happened in our relationship or in our marriage, until I learned like what trafficking actually looks like. He was my entire world. And so when he asked me if I would be willing to try, I of course said yes, because I was like, if he's asking me this and I trust him entirely and I know that this was what's gonna make him happy, then sure. And I remember I did try to quit once. I got a square job, I started getting friends, and that was all fine for about 3 months. And then some incident happened where all of a sudden we couldn't afford something, and then he wanted to move another time across the country, and we should do this together because we love each other, right? And so the support system I had started to rebuild suddenly disappeared, and we moved across the country again. And the only way that I knew really of like, how do you make money as quickly as possible, was to work in the sex industry. And I said I was only gonna do that for 2 years, and I ended up doing it for another 5. So leaving was the hardest thing I ever did. But the moment that I decided to leave, that I was done, that happened in a flash. But I couldn't do it alone. I called a friend because I was afraid of what he would do to me. And so I called a friend and asked her if she would come and be with me and help me to basically like get out. That leaving and then that staying away was so, so hard. And I couldn't do it alone. I'm so lucky to have had people in my life at that point who I could call at 3 a.m. when I really wanted to call him, and I could call them instead. Because, like I said, he was my world. And it took so much for him not to be. And knowing that I have a purpose that's not to be sold, that's not to just be selling my body to make money. My purpose is to love and to be loved. And I think that that's something that we can all universally experience together.
If I have one thing to say to a kid, we love you. Because ultimately, the kids that we meet out there, they need a lot of things, but the number one thing that they need is love. And the sex industry is the antithesis of love. You know, love is an action, it's not a word. And so what love looks like to the kids that we meet is like, we'll show up for you, but we'll keep showing up for you. And we don't care if you are getting out of the life or not. We don't care if you're gonna go to court or you're not. If you're clean and sober or you're using. If you're still with your trafficker or not, you love them or you hate them, you're still worthy of our relationship, and we want to see you as much while you're walking the track as we want to see you when you're in treatment, because you matter. And so we do a lot of things at Safety Compass. We provide crisis intervention, we do safety planning, we go to court, we do training, we do technical assistance. But the most important thing is that we love kids. The United States is the biggest consumer of commercial sex in the world. And sex tourism is mostly driven by buyers from the United States. And our tracks are full of people born here, raised here, working here. They're people of affluence and position of authority here buying our kids. And if we love our kids, we have to invest in our kids and their welfare. And that looks like supporting organizations like Safety Compass financially. Sometimes it looks like volunteering for organizations like Safety Compass as an advocate. But it also looks like, every little choice of how we treat each other, how we consume products, what we expose ourselves to on the internet. There's so many opportunities to, I think, support kids. And as it comes back to what we do, we just want to love the kids we get to meet. So if you think about people trying to exit the most dangerous of circumstances that you can possibly imagine, which is the world of human trafficking, there are these opportunities that could be exit ramps for people, but at almost every opportunity, there's like a cavern between them and the opportunity for safety. And that relates to resources and also to belief in a person's right to access safety. And a lot of times that belief can be spoken into people from safe helpers. But if there are no safe helpers there, sometimes that cavern and belief in someone's self and rights, it's just too big to take that leap. It's just too scary, or it's literally impossible. And so we have a vision of taking the access that Safety Compass has been a part of creating for survivors and making that available to people up and down the I-5 corridor throughout Oregon or beyond. And your support can help us achieve that. You can become a part of our story. You can become a part of our mission to love kids and young adults who have been survivors of commercial sexual exploitation here in our own community. You can be a part of that by supporting our mission today.